My parents wrote me out of their will for being unsuccessful. Then their golden child disappeared. I had been erased long before they put it in writing. For years, my parents made it clear that I was the disappointment, the unwanted footnote in a family that thrived on prestige, power, and carefully manufactured perfection. My crime? Not fitting into the blueprint they had meticulously crafted for me before I was even born. My father, Richard Caldwell, was a man who measured worth in figures and legacies. He had built an empire in real estate, a cold fortress of wealth that was meant to be passed down, generation after generation. My mother, Eleanor, was the architect of image. She ensured our family was perceived as pristine, refined, untouchable, and at the center of it all was him, Nathan, the golden child. My older brother had been everything they wanted: polished, obedient, a natural businessman with a brilliant mind for numbers and an uncanny ability to manipulate people with a well-timed smile. While I had stumbled through life, trying to find a path of my own, he had been handed the family name like a crown. When I was 17, I told them I wanted to be a writer. They laughed. When I was 20, I refused to go into the family business, opting instead to struggle through freelancing jobs and creative projects that barely paid the bills. They disowned me. Not legally. Not yet. But in every way that mattered. They stopped returning my calls. They spoke of me in the past tense at dinner parties. They funneled every last bit of their resources into Nathan, grooming him for greatness while leaving me to rot in obscurity. And then, one day, the final betrayal came. I still remember the exact moment I found out. A routine dinner, one of the rare occasions they still invited me, though more out of obligation than genuine interest. The conversation had been light, casual even, until my father offhandedly mentioned a recent revision to his will. "We finalized the inheritance last week," he had said, swirling the wine in his glass. "It's all set now. The estate, the assets, the company, everything will go to Nathan." I had blinked. Everything? My mother, never one to sugarcoat, had nodded. "Yes, dear. Everything. It's just practical. You never showed any interest in the business. You don't have the same drive as Nathan. You'd only squander it. Squander. Like I was some reckless, thoughtless fool, incapable of responsibility." "You mean I get nothing?" I had clarified, my voice eerily calm. "You have your own life, don't you?" My father had said, barely even looking at me. "You made your choice. My choice. As if they hadn't spent years making it for me. That was the night I walked away. No dramatic outbursts, no desperate pleas. I simply stood, placed my napkin on the table, and left. And from that moment on, I never looked back. Not when the holidays came and went without a single call. Not when I heard whispers of Nathan's successes, his high-profile deals, his rise to power. Not when they made it clear that, in their eyes, I no longer existed. Until the day it all fell apart. Nathan disappeared on a Monday. I found out the same way I found out anything about my family. By accident. My phone buzzed with a message from an old acquaintance, someone who still lingered in the social circles I had long since abandoned. "Did you hear? Your brother's missing. Your parents are losing their minds." At first, I thought it was a joke, or at the very least, some overblown family drama that had spiraled into gossip. But as the day went on, more messages poured in. Nathan hadn't been seen in 3 days. He had missed an important business meeting. His phone was off. His apartment untouched. The police were involved. And then the most shocking part. My parents wanted to talk to me. Not because they missed me. Not because they had suddenly realized they had another child. No, because they had no one else left. I didn't rush to them. I let them wait. For once, they were the ones desperate for my attention. It was a strange, intoxicating reversal, knowing that the same people who had dismissed me without hesitation were now the ones scrambling for scraps of my time. It wasn't until 2 days later that I finally showed up at their home, the same mansion I had once been raised in, now nothing more than a tomb filled with ghosts of a life I had long since abandoned. My mother opened the door herself. That alone was startling. Eleanor Caldwell did not answer doors. She had staff for that. Yet here she was, standing in the entryway, her usually pristine appearance slightly disheveled, her face drawn with exhaustion. "You came," she breathed, as if she hadn't been certain I would. "Surprised?" I said coolly, stepping past her without waiting for an invitation. The house smelled the same. Expensive furniture polish, faint traces of my father's cologne, the lingering scent of fresh-cut flowers. But something was off. The usual air of superiority, the suffocating presence of untouchable wealth and power. It had been replaced with something else. Panic, desperation. My father was in the study, staring at a half-drunk glass of coffee like it held all the answers he needed. He looked up as I entered, his face betraying a flicker of something I almost mistook for relief. "We need your help," he said, his voice stripped of its usual authority. I didn't sit. I didn't make myself comfortable. Instead, I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "Do you?" I mused. "Because last time we spoke you made it pretty clear I wasn't worth much to this family." My mother inhaled sharply. "Ethan, please, this isn't the time for..." "For what?" I cut in, tilting my head. "Reminders? Honesty? Seems like a great time for both." My father pinched the bridge of his nose, exhaling. "We don't have time for this. Nathan is missing. We've tried everything, police, private investigators, contacts, but nothing. He's just gone." "And what exactly do you expect me to do?" I asked, raising a brow. A tense silence followed. Then finally my mother spoke. "You're good at finding things," she said, hesitating over the words like they tasted bitter in her mouth. "You know how to dig into things most people don't. You always had a way of seeing what others overlooked." "Ah, so that was it. They didn't want me. They wanted what I could do for them. Typical." I let the silence stretch, watching as my mother shifted uncomfortably, and my father clenched his jaw. They hated this, hated having to come to me. But they had no choice, and I wasn't going to make this easy. "Fine," I said at last. "I'll help." Relief flashed across my mother's face. My father exhaled. "But," I continued, my voice turning sharp, "there will be conditions." They stiffened. "You want my help?" I said, stepping forward, lowering my voice just enough to make them uneasy. "Then we do this my way." I let the weight of those words settle, because they had spent their whole lives deciding who mattered, who was worthy, who deserved to stand in the light and who was meant to stay in the shadows. But now, I was the only one left, and Richard and Eleanor Caldwell would have to beg for my mercy. The moment the words left my mouth, I saw the flicker of resistance in my father's eyes. He wasn't used to this, wasn't used to me. In his world, power was a birthright, not something that shifted overnight. But life had a cruel way of humbling even the most self-assured men, and Richard Caldwell was about to learn what it meant to need the son he had cast aside. My mother, ever the diplomat, recovered first. She clasped her hands together, her perfectly manicured fingers tightening against her palms in a way that told me she despised this situation as much as I relished it. "Of course, dear," she said smoothly, her voice carefully measured. "We trust you." I laughed, a genuine, sharp laugh that made my father's jaw tighten. "No, you don't," I said, shaking my head. "You never have. And that's exactly why this is going to be done my way, because you don't get to make the decisions." My father exhaled through his nose, a subtle sign of irritation that I recognized from years of childhood disappointments. "Ethan, we don't have time for theatrics," he said, attempting to regain control of the conversation. "Nathan is missing. If you have demands, say them. Otherwise, we'll find someone else to..." "You won't," I interrupted, my voice smooth, certain. "Because if you could, you would have already. You wouldn't have called me. You wouldn't be sitting here swallowing your pride." His nostrils flared. My mother placed a hand on his arm, a silent plea for restraint. "Go on," she said softly. I leaned against the fireplace, my fingers tracing the carved wooden mantel, an expensive antique relic that had been in our family for generations. It had always been a symbol of our legacy, a reminder that the Caldwell name meant something. "First," I began, turning back to them, "I want access to everything, every detail of Nathan's life, every financial record, every personal contact. I don't care how private it is, I get full transparency." My father hesitated, and I smirked. "You're hiding something already, aren't you?" I mused, watching as his lips pressed into a thin line. "We aren't hiding anything," my mother interjected quickly, "but you'll get everything you need." "Good," I said. "Second, I want control over this investigation. No interference, no second guessing. If you bring in anyone else, I walk." My father exhaled sharply but didn't argue. "And finally," I said, letting the last demand settle heavily between us, "I want a revised will." Silence. My mother blinked, and I had arrived. Genuine shock crossed her face. My father, however, wasn't shocked. He was furious. "This is about money?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. "No," I said simply. "This is about correction." I pushed off the fireplace and crossed the room slowly, stopping just in front of his chair. "You made it very clear that I was worthless to this family," I continued, my voice controlled but cutting. "You erased me. Now, if you want my help, I want it undone. I want it in writing. I want proof that you know how wrong you were." My mother's lips parted, as if she wanted to object, but nothing came out. My father, however, met my gaze with something bordering on hatred. "You think you can force your way back in?" he asked coldly. "That this one moment gives you power over me?" I smiled, slow and deliberate. "I don't think it," I murmured. "I know it." A long, tense silence stretched between us. Then finally he stood. "Fine," he said, the word clipped. "You'll get what you want." I nodded once. "Then let's get started." Nathan's life was pristine, too pristine. As I sifted through the documents my parents provided, it became increasingly clear that my brother had been a man with no flaws, at least not on paper. His bank accounts were overflowing. His company was thriving. His investments were flawless. His public image was one of calculated perfection. And that was the problem. No one is that perfect. "Something's missing," I muttered, scanning through his last known transactions. It had taken my parents an entire day to gather everything I had requested, and even then, I could feel their hesitation, the pieces they were holding back. Nathan had disappeared 3 days ago. No sign of struggle, no ransom demands. Just gone. But as I combed through his personal emails, his financial records, his call logs, something stood out. A single wire transfer, $10,000, sent to a name I didn't recognize. Avery Blackwell. I tapped my fingers against the desk, the name rolling around in my mind. Nathan never gave away money without a reason. I pulled up my phone and ran a quick search. The results were surprising. Avery Blackwell wasn't just some random person. She was a journalist, an investigative journalist, and not just any journalist, one with a reputation for digging up dirt on high-profile families. I stared at the screen, my mind piecing together the implications. Nathan was hiding something, and whatever it was, it had been worth paying off a journalist to keep quiet. But had she stayed quiet, or had she been the reason he vanished? Finding Avery Blackwell wasn't difficult. Getting her to talk, that was another story. She ignored my first 2 messages, probably assuming I was just another rich asshole trying to intimidate her into silence. It wasn't until I showed up at her favorite cafe, an old habit of hers based on her social media, that she finally acknowledged me. She was younger than I expected, late 20s, sharp-eyed, and wary. She didn't look surprised when I sat down across from her. "You're persistent," she said, stirring her coffee without looking at me. "And you're hiding something," I replied. Her lips quirked slightly. "What do you want, Ethan?" I leaned forward. "I want to know why Nathan paid you 10 grand before he disappeared." She sighed, setting her spoon down. "Look, I don't know where your brother is, but I do know he wasn't the man you thought he was." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Explain." She hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "I was investigating your family," she admitted. "Your brother, specifically. And what I found..." She exhaled. "Nathan wasn't just running a business. He was laundering money." I stilled. "Through the company?" She nodded. "Through fake investments, shell corporations, the whole deal. I had proof. I confronted him. And instead of trying to deny it, he paid me to bury the story." I stared at the folder. "And you took the money?" "For a while," she admitted. "But then he disappeared. And now? I want answers too." I exhaled slowly, my mind racing. Nathan had been hiding something big, and if Avery was telling the truth, then maybe my brother hadn't just vanished. Maybe someone had made him disappear. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. "You want answers?" I asked, meeting her gaze. She nodded. "Then let's find them together," I murmured. Nathan Caldwell wasn't just missing. He had been erased. For days I pored over every detail of his life, every financial transaction, every call he had made in the weeks leading up to his disappearance. The deeper I dug, the more I realized that Nathan had been living a lie, a carefully constructed illusion that had finally shattered, leaving behind nothing but the wreckage of secrets too dangerous to stay buried. But the real question wasn't where he had gone. It was who had taken him. And as I sat across from Avery Blackwell in a dimly lit cafe, flipping through the evidence she had gathered, I realized I was much closer to the answer than I had ever expected. "You're sure about this?" I asked, my voice low. Avery nodded, her expression grim. "Positive. Nathan wasn't just laundering money. He was doing it for some very dangerous people." I exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over my face. "Who?" She hesitated, then pushed another folder toward me. "Ever heard of Lucien Moreau?" The name sent a chill down my spine. Lucien Moreau wasn't just anyone. He was a name spoken in hushed whispers in the world of high finance and organized crime, a billionaire with no official criminal record but a trail of missing people and ruined lives behind him. Nathan had been laundering his money. "Oh no," I muttered. "Yeah," Avery said, tapping her nails against her coffee cup. "Your brother got in deep, too deep, and I think he knew it was only a matter of time before Moreau came to collect." I stared at the papers, at the evidence that painted Nathan not as the untouchable golden child my parents had worshipped, but as a man who had been drowning, grasping at anything to keep himself afloat. "So, what are we saying here?" I asked slowly. "That Moreau had him taken out?" Avery's lips pressed into a thin line. "Maybe. But there's one thing that doesn't add up." She flipped to another page, pointing at a timestamp. "This transaction. Nathan wired 10 grand to me the night before he disappeared. But look at the memo line." I leaned closer. "For insurance." A slow, uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. "Insurance for what?" I muttered. Avery met my gaze, her expression unreadable. Maybe he knew this was coming. I left the cafe with a burning sensation in my chest, a mixture of anger, suspicion, and something dangerously close to pity. Nathan had always been the one with all the answers, the one our parents placed their faith in. But the more I uncovered, the more I realized he hadn't been in control at all. I drove straight to my parents' estate. This time, I didn't wait for an invitation. The moment Eleanor Caldwell opened the door, her face pale from sleepless nights and worry, I pushed past her. "We need to talk," I said, my voice sharp. My father was in his study, the same place I had left him last time. His glass of coffee was untouched now, meaning whatever relief caffeine had once offered was no longer enough. He looked up as I entered, his eyes hollow. "Did you find him?" he asked, voice strained. I threw the folder onto his desk. "No," I said coldly, "but I found out what he was hiding." My mother sank into the nearest chair, her hands shaking. My father slowly flipped through the papers, his expression darkening with every page. When he reached Lucien Moreau's name, his entire body went rigid. And that's when I knew. "You already knew," I said, my voice deathly calm. My father exhaled slowly, closing the folder. "We suspected," he admitted. I stared at him, a sharp, bitter laugh escaping my lips. "Suspected? You suspected your son was tangled up with one of the most dangerous men in the world, and you still handed him everything." My mother flinched, but my father met my gaze, unflinching. "We thought he could handle it," he said simply. I wanted to hit something. "You mean you thought he was too perfect to fail?" I spat. Silence. Eleanor Caldwell, once a woman who exuded nothing but grace and control, looked utterly defeated. "So, what do we do?" she whispered. I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling sharply. "We find Moreau," I said. Lucien Moreau didn't hide in the shadows like most men of his kind. He owned the shadows. His office was in a sleek, high-rise downtown, a legitimate empire built on illegitimate foundations. Getting a meeting with him wasn't easy, but I wasn't asking. I walked into his building without an appointment, past security that eyed me with suspicion, and straight to the receptionist, who barely had time to react before I placed a stack of papers on her desk. "Give this to Moreau," I said. "Tell him it's about Nathan Caldwell." The message must have been enough, because 10 minutes later, I was escorted to his office. Lucien Moreau was a man who didn't need to be intimidating. His presence did it for him. He sat behind a glass desk, his expression unreadable, his gaze sharp enough to cut steel. "Ethan Caldwell," he said smoothly. "You have my attention." I didn't waste time. "My brother worked for you," I said. "And now he's missing. I need to know if you had something to do with it." Moreau tilted his head slightly, a faint smile playing on his lips. "And if I did?" he asked. I held his gaze. "Then I need to know what happens next." He chuckled, leaning back. "Your brother was an ambitious man," he mused. "But ambition without caution? That's a dangerous combination." I clenched my jaw. "Did you kill him?" Moreau's smile didn't fade. "No," he said simply. "But someone else might have." That answer sent a chill through me. "What do you mean?" I demanded. He stood, adjusting the cuff of his sleeve. "Nathan had many debts," he said. "Not just to me, but there was one in particular he was desperate to avoid." I frowned. "Who?" Moreau glanced at me, and his expression hardened. "Your father." The drive back to the estate was a blur. My mind raced, pieces clicking into place faster than I could process. Nathan had been desperate. Nathan had been scared. And the only people powerful enough to make someone like him disappear were the same people who had erased me. When I stormed into my father's study, he didn't even look surprised. "You knew," I said, my voice low, shaking with rage. He didn't deny it. "Nathan was a liability," he said, his voice cold. "He made too many mistakes. He was going to drag the entire family down with him." "So you got rid of him," I said. Silence. And that was my answer. For years, I had believed that I had been the disposable one, that I had been cast aside because I was lesser. But the truth was far worse. Nathan had been their favorite, until he wasn't. And once he became a problem, they erased him just as easily as they had erased me. I let out a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "I hope it was worth it," I said finally, turning away. My father frowned. "What does that mean?" I glanced back at him, my lips curling into a slow, cold smile. "It means I just revised my will," I murmured. "And starting tomorrow, the Caldwell legacy belongs to me. And my father was the one left behind. My sister faked a pregnancy to scam money, but I exposed her at the baby shower. My sister, Vanessa, had always been a liar. Not the small, harmless kind of liar, the kind who exaggerates stories to make them more interesting, the kind who twists the truth just enough to make themselves look better. No, Vanessa was the kind of liar who could look you dead in the eyes while stabbing you in the back and convince you she was doing you a favor. I had grown up watching her manipulate everyone around her, our parents, friends, boyfriends, even complete strangers. She had a talent for spinning elaborate sob stories that turned her into the victim of every situation, and every single time someone fell for it. So when she announced she was pregnant, I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something about the whole thing felt off. At first, it was just little things. The timeline didn't make sense. She claimed she was 3 months along when she announced it, but 2 months before that, she had been bragging about how she and her boyfriend Jason weren't even sleeping together. Then there was the way she avoided details. Most expectant mothers love to talk about their symptoms, the morning sickness, the weird cravings, the little milestones. But Vanessa? She kept things vague. She'd mention how tired she was or how she was struggling to eat, but every time someone asked for specifics, she'd change the subject. And the biggest red flag? She never went to a single doctor's appointment. Every time someone asked, she had an excuse. The clinic lost my records. I'm trying a holistic approach to pregnancy. Too many chemicals in hospitals. The doctor said everything looks fine, no need for an ultrasound yet. It was bullshit. All of it. And I knew it. But no one else seemed to. Vanessa played the role perfectly. She posted pictures of baby bump progress, but only in baggy sweatshirts and loose dresses. She started sharing articles about single motherhood, subtly painting herself as the strong, independent woman who had been abandoned by Jason after she told him the news. And of course, she started collecting money. First, it was just little things. A few extra bucks from our parents to help her prepare, a GoFundMe set up by her best friend to help her with unexpected costs. Then the real scam began. She started dropping hints about financial struggles, how expensive medical bills were, how hard it was to afford baby supplies, how she just wished she could have a proper nursery. And right on cue, our mother swooped in, insisting that Vanessa have a baby shower. A big one, Mom said, her eyes gleaming as if this were the most exciting thing to ever happen to her. We'll invite everyone, family, friends, co-workers. We have to make sure the baby gets everything it needs. And Vanessa? She acted shy, grateful, as if this wasn't exactly what she wanted all along. That's when I knew. She had no intention of stopping. She was going to ride this lie all the way to the finish line, unless someone stopped her. Unless I stopped her. The moment I decided to expose her, I knew I had to do it right. There was no point in confronting her privately. She would lie, twist my words, make herself the victim like she always did. No. If I was going to end this, I had to do it in a way that no one, not even Vanessa, could talk her way out of. So I started gathering evidence. The first breakthrough came when I found her stash. I had been at her apartment pretending to be the supportive sibling when I excused myself to the bathroom. On the way back, I saw a plastic shopping bag sticking out from under her bed. Curiosity got the best of me. I peeked inside, and there it was, a fake pregnancy belly. I yanked the bag out and dumped the contents onto the floor. Pads to make her hips look wider. Foam inserts to adjust the shape of the belly as it grew. Even adhesive strips to make it stick to her skin. She had planned this down to the smallest detail. But that wasn't the worst of it. The real smoking gun came a few days later when I followed her. She had told Mom she was going to a prenatal appointment. So I tailed her. And guess where she went? Not a clinic. Not a hospital. Not even a holistic healer. She went to a day spa. A freaking spa. I watched from my car as she waltzed in, dressed in leggings and an oversized hoodie, her baby bump suddenly looking much smaller than usual. And that was it. That was the moment I knew exactly how I was going to expose her. At the baby shower. In front of everyone. The day of the event, Vanessa was glowing. Not in the way pregnant women glow. No, she was glowing from victory. From the sheer pleasure of knowing she had conned everyone in that room. The living room was packed with gifts, cribs, strollers, designer baby clothes, stacks of cash-filled envelopes. She sat in the center, cradling her fake belly, milking the attention for everything it was worth. "Oh my, Vanessa, you look amazing," a family friend gushed. Vanessa placed a hand on her belly, perfectly rehearsed. "It's been tough, but it's all worth it for this little miracle." I nearly gagged. It was time. I stood up, clearing my throat. "Vanessa," I said sweetly, "I think it's time for the big moment." She blinked, feigning innocence. "What moment?" "The belly cast," I said. "You know, the one where we make a mold of your bump so you can keep it forever." Her face went white. Around the room, people perked up, excited. "That's a great idea," someone chimed in. "Oh, that would be beautiful," another guest gushed. Vanessa laughed nervously. "Oh, I don't think—" "Oh, come on," I said, my voice syrupy sweet. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime memory. Let's do it now." I pulled out the supplies, a plaster kit I had bought just for this moment, and set them on the table. And then, I reached out and ripped her fake belly straight off. The room erupted. Gasps, shouts, stunned silence as Vanessa's flat stomach was exposed for everyone to see. She shrieked, scrambling to cover herself, but it was too late. The damage was done. Mom's face twisted in horror. Guests backed away, murmuring in shock. And then, Jason, her baby daddy, the man she had lied about abandoning her, stood up from the crowd and threw his drink in her face. "You lying, manipulative psycho," he spat. "You made me look like a deadbeat for sympathy, for money?" Vanessa stammered, her eyes darting around, looking for an escape, an excuse, a way out. But there was none. Not this time. I smiled, because she had built this entire scam for attention. And now, she was getting exactly what she wanted, just not the way she expected. The silence after I ripped off Vanessa's fake belly was deafening. It was the kind of silence that hangs heavy in the air, thick with shock, disbelief, and the slow, dawning realization that everything you thought was true had just been shattered. And then, the chaos began. "Oh my goodness!" Someone whispered it, barely audible, but it was enough. Enough to snap everyone out of their stunned paralysis. Enough to turn that shocked silence into an explosion of voices. People gasped. Some stumbled backward, as if Vanessa's deception was a physical force pushing them away. Others turned to each other, whispering furiously. And in the center of it all, Vanessa stood frozen, her eyes darting wildly from face to face, her hands clutching at the air as if trying to grab onto an excuse that didn't exist. Mom was the first to speak. "Vanessa," she choked out, her face pale. "What is—" She gestured at Vanessa's now very flat stomach, her voice strangled. "What is this?" Vanessa's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. But no words came out, because there was nothing she could say. I had cornered her completely. No lies, no manipulation, no twisting the story in her favor. Just cold, undeniable truth, laid out for everyone to see, and she wasn't prepared for it. Jason, the supposed deadbeat dad she had thrown under the bus for sympathy, was the first to snap. "You lying, manipulative psycho," he spat, stepping forward. His hands were clenched into fists, his entire body trembling with rage. "You told everyone I abandoned you, that I left you pregnant and alone. You had my own family calling me a piece of shit for months, and this whole time, you weren't even pregnant?" Vanessa flinched, her face twisting into something desperate, something panicked. I can explain," she stammered. "Jason, please, I was going to tell you—" He let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "When? Before or after you scammed everyone in this room?" Vanessa's eyes flickered toward Mom and Dad, her last hope of salvation. But they weren't rushing to defend her. Mom just stared at her, her expression a mix of horror and fury. Dad's face was hard, unreadable. His jaw clenched so tightly I thought he might break a tooth. They had no idea what to do, because they had never seen Vanessa fail before. They had never watched her lose control of a situation this completely, and the realization hit me like a lightning bolt. This was the first time they were seeing her for who she truly was. The guests were turning now, the murmurs growing louder, sharper, filled with anger, betrayal, disgust. A woman near the front, Mom's friend Linda, crossed her arms, shaking her head. "So all those donations? The GoFundMe? The money we all sent you for baby supplies? Was a scam," I finished for her. Vanessa whipped her head toward me, her expression vicious, but she still didn't deny it. Because she couldn't. Not with the evidence staring everyone in the face. Her hands shook, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Something close to real fear. Because she knew. This wasn't just a family embarrassment. This was fraud, and it was all unraveling fast. Vanessa's breathing turned shallow, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She looked like a trapped animal, her mind racing for an escape. And then, she snapped. "You're lying!" she suddenly shrieked, pointing at me with wild desperation. I arched an eyebrow. "Oh? About what part exactly?" She grabbed at the ruined fake belly, shoving it toward the crowd as if it would somehow prove me wrong. This isn't what it looks like." Jason laughed darkly. "Oh? So what is it then, Vanessa? A fashion statement?" I was wearing it to protect my real bump," she blurted out, her voice pitching into hysteria. You don't understand. I lost weight because I was sick, and the doctor said it would make my pregnancy harder to see, and Enough!" Mom's voice cut through the noise like a blade, sharp, cold, final. And for the Vanessa actually shut up. Mom turned to me, her eyes dark with something I had never seen before. Not disappointment, not frustration, guilt, for enabling this, for ignoring every red flag, for always defending Vanessa, no matter what. But now that she had scammed their friends, humiliated them in public, and used a fake pregnancy to manipulate everyone in this room, even Mom couldn't ignore the truth anymore. She took a slow, shaky breath and turned back to Vanessa. "Tell the truth." It wasn't a request. It was a demand. Vanessa visibly swallowed, her lips pressing into a thin line. But she wasn't going to give up that easily, because she never did. Fine, she said finally, lifting her chin, desperate to regain control. You want the truth? She let out a sharp, bitter laugh. You all want to act so shocked? Like I'm the villain? She spread her arms, gesturing to the guests. I faked a pregnancy, sure. But why? Huh? Why do you think I had to? She jabbed a finger toward Mom. Because of her. Because of all of you. You only pay attention to me when I'm a victim, when I'm suffering, when I need saving. People shifted uncomfortably, because they knew she was twisting this into a sob story, and some of the softer, dumber ones, were starting to fall for it. Not happening. Not this time. I stepped forward, closing the space between us. You had a choice, I said softly, my voice cutting through the noise. You always had a choice, Vanessa. But instead of being a decent person, instead of actually doing something with your life, you decided it was easier to lie, to steal, to manipulate the people who actually gave a damn about you. Her mouth twitched, her mask cracking completely now. You know what your real problem is? I continued. You can't survive without being the center of attention. You can't handle the idea of people not feeling sorry for you. She scoffed, but I wasn't done. I stepped even closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. And the saddest part? You're not even good at it anymore. Her face twisted. Pure rage. Because she knew. I had won. The guests began leaving one by one, shaking their heads, whispering to each other about how disgusting this all was. Jason ripped the baby gift registry list off the table and tore it in half. I'm getting my money back, he muttered. And Mom? She just stood there, staring at Vanessa like she had never seen her before. Because maybe she actually hadn't. And Vanessa, she had nothing left. No excuses, no way out, no one left to manipulate, just the ruins of her biggest scam yet. I turned, grabbing my coat, and as I reached the door, I glanced back at her one last time. Congratulations, Vanessa, I said. You finally got what you wanted. She blinked. What? I smiled. Everyone's attention. Then I walked out, leaving her to deal with the wreckage, because this time she was cleaning up her own mess. I half expected Vanessa to disappear after the baby shower disaster, to vanish into whatever hole scammers crawled into when their lies finally caught up to them. Maybe she'd move to another town, change her number, reinvent herself the way she always did when things went south. But no, Vanessa didn't run, because she wasn't done yet. She had spent months carefully crafting this scam, weaving her lies so tightly around our family that, for a while, even Mom and Dad had believed her. And now, she was determined to salvage what was left, even if she had to burn the rest of us to the ground to do it. It started the very next day. My phone buzzed with a notification, and when I glanced at the screen, my stomach twisted. Vanessa, you ruined my life. Hope you're happy. I stared at the message for a moment, debating whether to respond. Then another text popped up. Vanessa, you always hated me. That's why you did this. Not because you care, not because you're some hero, just because you wanted to humiliate me. I let out a slow, tired sigh. There it was. The real Vanessa. Not the victim, not the loving sister she pretended to be, but the bitter, conniving narcissist who couldn't accept responsibility for anything. I typed out a response. Me. You humiliated yourself, Vanessa. I just held up the mirror. That should have been the end of it. But of course it wasn't. Because Vanessa wasn't done playing the victim. She couldn't stand the fact that I had won. So she did what she always did best. She started rewriting the story. Within hours she was posting online, spinning the entire baby shower fiasco into a brand new sob story. She didn't deny the fake pregnancy. Oh no, that would have been too easy. Instead, she went for something worse. She turned me into the villain. Her first post was simple, vague, a baited hook, waiting for sympathy. Betrayal from family cuts the deepest. Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments, all pouring in with the kind of instant validation she thrived on. Stay strong, girl. Family can be the worst. You deserve better. Who hurt you? Name names. Let us drag them. And then, when the sympathy was high enough, she dropped the bomb. Imagine struggling with infertility for years, finally seeing a glimmer of hope, only for your own sister to rip it away from you in front of everyone. The moment I read it, I saw red. Infertility. She was going with infertility. She was twisting her scam into some tragic narrative where she had been the real victim all along, where I hadn't exposed a con artist, but had attacked a grieving woman who had faked a pregnancy out of trauma. And worst of all, people believed her. They flooded her comments with support, calling me cruel, heartless, evil. Some of her friends, the ones who didn't see the truth at the baby shower, started DMing me, spewing venom on her behalf. "You're disgusting. I hope karma gets you. You don't deserve to call yourself her sister." My hands clenched around my phone. Because this was Vanessa at her worst. This was what she did when she had nothing left. She would rather drag me down with her than admit she was wrong. I could have ignored it, could have let it die down, but I had spent my entire life cleaning up Vanessa's messes. And this time, I wasn't going to let her rewrite my story. So I fought back. I waited a full day before making my move. Long enough for her lies to spread. Long enough for people to fully buy into her version of events. Then I did something Vanessa had never expected. I went public. Not just with the truth, with evidence. I made a post. A long one. And attached to it, every single receipt. The texts where Vanessa had bragged about getting free money from people. Screenshots of her fake baby bump purchased online. The GoFundMe transactions, thousands of dollars sent to her under false pretenses. The video of her walking into a spa instead of a doctor's office the day she was supposed to have an ultrasound. I laid it all out. Not with anger, not with petty insults, just cold, hard proof. And at the very bottom of the post I wrote, "I didn't ruin Vanessa's life. She did that all on her own." And then I walked away. I turned off my phone. I let the truth do what it always does. And when I checked back a few hours later, it was carnage. Vanessa's followers had turned on her. The people who had donated money were demanding refunds. Some even threatened legal action. Even her closest friends, the ones who had blindly defended her, were calling her out. "What the hell, Vanessa? You lied about infertility? So you just scammed all of us? You're disgusting. Don't ever speak to me again." Her carefully crafted empire of manipulation was crumbling in real time. And Vanessa? She was losing it. She tried deleting comments, then blocking people, then posting a half-assed apology, where she claimed she had mental health struggles that made her do it. But nobody was buying it anymore. Because she had been caught. Publicly. Completely. And there was no coming back from it. Mom called me the next day. I expected her to be furious, to scream at me for ruining Vanessa's life. But when I picked up, all I heard was a sigh. A long, exhausted sigh. "She's moving out," Mom said finally. I blinked. "What?" "She's leaving," she repeated. "She says she needs a fresh start. I don't think she'll be back anytime soon." Mom sounded tired of Vanessa's games. She wasn't defending her. She wasn't begging me to fix things. She was just done. And for once, so was I. Vanessa vanished after that. She deleted her social media, moved to another city, tried to reinvent herself, just like I knew she would. But the thing about burning every bridge? Eventually you run out of places to go. And me? I moved on. Not because she deserved forgiveness. Not because I cared what happened to her. I was free. Free from her manipulation. Free from her lies. Free from being the one who always had to clean up the mess. And that was the best revenge of all. Vanessa was gone, but her mess, that still lingered. Even though she had fled the city, deleted her social media, and tried to disappear, the consequences of her scam were still very real. People were still angry. The guests from the baby shower, the friends who had given her money, the strangers who had donated to her GoFundMe under false pretenses. They weren't just going to let her slither away without repercussions. And neither was I. Because Vanessa had spent her entire life escaping consequences. She had lied, stolen, manipulated, and every single time she had managed to weasel her way out of punishment. Not this time. This time, she was going to pay for what she did. The lawsuit came first. Jason, her so-called deadbeat baby daddy, was the first to take legal action. I didn't even blame him. Vanessa had dragged his name through the mud, made him look like a villain, all for her own personal gain. She had slandered him in front of his family, his friends, his workplace, made him seem like the kind of man who could abandon a pregnant woman without a second thought. And now he was done being silent. He sued for defamation, emotional distress, and fraud, claiming that her lies had cost him personal and professional opportunities. Then came the GoFundMe donors. Turns out, lying about a pregnancy to scam money out of people, that's called fraud. Several people who had donated to her cause, thinking they were helping a struggling single mother, filed formal complaints against her. And since the GoFundMe had reached thousands of dollars, it wasn't just an embarrassing situation. It was a legal one that couldn't be ignored. And then came Mom and Dad. I had expected them to defend her, like they always had, to try and sweep everything under the rug, to blame me for exposing her instead of blaming Vanessa for the actual scam. They didn't. Because Vanessa hadn't just scammed friends and acquaintances. She had scammed them too. Mom had sent her thousands of dollars, covering fake doctor's visits and maternity expenses. Dad had put down a deposit on an apartment for her, thinking she needed a stable place to raise the baby. And when the truth came out, when they realized they had wasted money on a lie, that was the final straw. Mom was furious, not just at Vanessa, but at herself. I had never seen her look so defeated, so shaken, as when she told me, I really believed her. I defended her, and all along she was just using us. It was my mother who had ever truly admitted that Vanessa was broken beyond repair. She had stopped making excuses for her. Dad didn't say much, but the fact that he cut off Vanessa financially said everything. Because for Vanessa, that was the worst punishment of all. For weeks we heard nothing from her. It was like she had fallen off the face of the earth. She wasn't on social media. She wasn't answering calls. She was just gone. And honestly, that was fine by me, because I had spent my whole life trapped in Vanessa's orbit, being dragged into her chaos, forced to clean up her disasters. But now I had finally broken free. I moved on, for real this time. I focused on my job, reconnected with old friends, spent time with people who actually cared about me instead of just using me for their own gain. I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for Vanessa's next scam, lie, or disaster to pull me back in. I was done with her, completely, and I thought that was the end of it. Until she came back. It happened 6 months later. I was at home, curled up on the couch, scrolling through my phone when I saw it. A new email. From Vanessa. My chest tightened, my finger hovering over the message. Part of me wanted to delete it without reading it. But another part of me, the part that wanted to see just how low she would sink, clicked it open. And as I read the first line, I laughed, because it was so predictable. I know you probably hate me right now, but I need your help. Help. Vanessa needed help. After ruining lives, stealing money, humiliating herself on a public scale, she still thought I would help her. I kept reading, my amusement slowly morphing into disbelief. She went on about how she was struggling, how she had lost everything, how she was scared and alone. Then came the real punchline. I know I messed up, but you're my sister, and family forgives each other, right? I sat back, shaking my head. Because Vanessa, she still didn't get it. She still thought she could wiggle her way back in. That after everything she had done, I would still be there to pick up the pieces. But I wasn't that person anymore. I wasn't her safety net. I wasn't going to save her. Not now. Not ever. So I replied. A short message. A final message. One that made it crystal clear that whatever connection we had once had, it was gone. Me. Vanessa, I don't hate you. I just don't care anymore. Good luck. And then, I blocked her, because I wasn't going to waste one more second of my life on someone who had never cared about anyone but herself. Months passed, then a year. And Vanessa? She stayed gone. She didn't try to contact me again, didn't come crawling back to Mom and Dad, didn't try to rebuild the life she had shattered. Maybe she was still out there, scheming, lying, trying to find new people to manipulate. Maybe she had finally hit rock bottom. Nevertheless, Vanessa was no longer my problem.